Sportico just dropped their highest-paid athletes report, naming Caitlin Clark the highest-paid WNBA player at $16.1 million, and Aja Wilson is absolutely losing her mind as she's not even on the list. While Clark's raking in six-figure speaking fees and multi-million-dollar endorsements from Nike, Gatorade, State Farm, and Wilson, Aja's throwing another one of her infamous tantrums. Remember when she claimed she makes the same speaking fees as Clark? Here's the problem. No company has ever bragged about booking Wilson for an event, while corporations are lining up to pay Clark at least $100,000 just to show up. Before we break everything down, let us know down in the comments. The numbers don't lie, and they're absolutely brutal for Aja Wilson. Sportico released their annual highest-paid athletes report, and Caitlin Clark sits comfortably at $16.1 million in total earnings for 2025. That's not a typo. Clark's financial empire spans far beyond her $70,000 WNBA salary with the Indiana Fever. Her off-court endorsements dwarf her basketball paycheck by over 200 times, creating a revenue stream that Wilson can only dream about. Clark's endorsement portfolio reads like a who's who of major corporations. Nike locked her into that historic $28 million deal, the richest sponsorship contract ever given to a women's basketball player. Gatorade wanted her energy and appeal to connect with younger athletes. State Farm recognized her ability to represent family values and reliability. Wilson Sporting Goods saw her as the perfect ambassador for their basketball equipment line. These aren't basketball-only partnerships either. These companies view Clark as a global influencer who transcends sports entirely. Wilson's brand partnerships tell a completely different story. She's essentially limited to her Nike deal, which she had to fight tooth and nail to secure. Wilson literally had to campaign for her signature shoe, playing every card in the book, including race to pressure Nike into giving her what she felt she deserved. That's it. That's her entire major endorsement portfolio. No Gatorade, no State Farm, no crossover brands seeing value in her personality or marketability. The earning gap reveals everything about their respective market values. Clark's $16.1 million represents legitimate corporate investment in her brand power and fan appeal. Companies aren't just buying her basketball skills, they're buying her ability to move products, attract new customers, and represent their values. Wilson remains completely dependent on her WNBA salary and that single Nike partnership. She's trapped in basketball-only endorsements while Clark operates as a full-scale business empire. Here's what really stings for Wilson. She didn't even make Sportico's highest-paid list. A former WNBA MVP and champion getting completely ignored while Clark dominates the conversation. Wilson's social media has been suspiciously quiet since these numbers dropped, but her past patterns suggest another meltdown is brewing. She can't handle being overshadowed by Clark's success, especially when the financial evidence is this overwhelming. Major brands see Clark as someone who grows entire markets and brings positive energy to their campaigns. Wilson's history of controversy and negative campaigning has essentially blacklisted her from the corporate world. Companies want brand ambassadors who inspire people, not athletes who create division and drama. Clark builds bridges while Wilson burns them down. The earning gap isn't just about basketball talent. It's about character, marketability, and the ability to represent brands in a positive light. This financial domination by Clark connects directly to Wilson's long pattern of jealousy and targeting that started way back in college. Wilson's toxic behavior toward Clark actually started years before they shared the same professional league. Back when Clark was tearing up college basketball at Iowa, Wilson was already throwing shade from her perch at South Carolina. Wilson questioned Clark's greatness specifically because she didn't win a national championship. That criticism sounds reasonable until you dig into the actual circumstances each player faced during their college careers. Clark led Iowa to back-to-back national championship games with a roster that consisted mostly of role players and limited recruiting talent. She carried that team's entire offensive load, often scoring over 30 points per game while creating opportunities for teammates who weren't even close to five-star recruit level. Clark's supporting cast at Iowa included solid players, but nobody who was destined for WNBA stardom. She was doing everything: scoring, facilitating, rebounding, and keeping Iowa competitive against programs with far superior talent. Wilson's championship run at South Carolina tells a completely different story. She played alongside multiple future WNBA players and a roster stacked with highly ranked recruits. Wilson didn't need to carry the entire team on her shoulders because she had legitimate help at every position. South Carolina recruited at an elite level, bringing in top-tier talent that made Wilson's job significantly easier. The irony becomes obvious when you compare their individual impact. Clark nearly won a national championship while being the only elite talent on her roster. She kept Iowa competitive in games where they had no business being close, using her individual brilliance to elevate lesser players. Wilson won her championship as part of a dominant team effort where multiple players could take over games. She needed that stacked roster to capture her title. Clark's performance in the national championship games showcased exactly why Wilson's criticism was so ridiculous. Against South Carolina and other elite teams, Clark put up historic numbers while facing constant double teams and defensive schemes designed specifically to stop her. She was literally the entire scouting report for opposing teams. Meanwhile, Wilson benefited from playing alongside other elite talents who demanded defensive attention and created easier scoring opportunities. Wilson's college comments established her pattern of diminishing Clark's achievements by focusing on team accomplishments rather than individual excellence. She couldn't acknowledge that Clark's individual impact was superior to her own, so she pointed to championship hardware as the only measure of greatness. That argument falls apart when you examine the supporting cast each player had access to during their college careers. This jealousy toward Clark's individual brilliance revealed Wilson's insecurity even before they became professional rivals. She saw Clark's ability to dominate games single-handedly and felt threatened by that level of individual excellence. Wilson needed her team to succeed while Clark was her team's success. When Clark entered the WNBA, that college jealousy exploded into full-blown campaigns designed to undermine Clark's instant success and overshadowing of Wilson's veteran status. Clark's arrival in the WNBA sent Wilson into panic mode, and she launched multiple desperate campaigns to stay relevant while Clark dominated every headline. Wilson's "I Have a Shoe Too" campaign became the most obvious example of her insecurity. Every time Clark's Nike partnership generated buzz, Wilson would post about her own signature shoe. She wasn't celebrating her own achievements. She was desperately trying to remind people that she also had endorsement deals. Wilson turned her social media into a constant reminder that she existed in the same space as Clark. The "what is delayed is not denied" campaign revealed even more desperation from Wilson. She plastered this phrase across her social media accounts, clearly referencing her belief that she deserved the recognition and endorsements that Clark was receiving. Wilson spent months posting cryptic messages about delayed success and denied opportunities. Every post felt like a direct shot at Clark's immediate success and brand partnerships. Wilson couldn't handle watching a rookie accomplish in months what she hadn't achieved in years. Wilson publicly questioned Clark's Nike endorsement timing and value through carefully worded social media posts and interviews. She suggested that Clark's deal came too early and questioned whether the newcomer had proven herself worthy of such a massive contract. Wilson's comments weren't about basketball performance. They were about her frustration that brands chose Clark over veteran players who had already established themselves in the league. She couldn't understand why companies would invest in potential rather than proven track records. Throughout Clark's rookie season, Wilson deployed subtle social media digs designed to undermine Clark's achievements. When Clark broke 62 records, Wilson would post about veteran accomplishments. When Clark received media attention, Wilson would share throwback highlights of her own performances. Wilson never directly attacked Clark, but her timing was always suspicious. She was running interference on Clark's moments, trying to redirect attention back to herself. The Time magazine Athlete of the Year controversy exposed Wilson's most desperate move yet. When Clark received this prestigious recognition, Wilson claimed it was a race thing, rather than acknowledging Clark's incredible impact on women's sports. Wilson couldn't accept that Clark had transcended basketball in ways that she never could. Instead of celebrating women's basketball getting mainstream recognition, Wilson made it about racial dynamics and diminished Clark's achievement. Clark approached brand building through positivity and inspiration, while Wilson chose negativity and controversy. Clark focused on growing the game and connecting with fans. Wilson focused on tearing down others and creating division. Companies noticed this difference immediately. They wanted ambassadors who built communities, not athletes who created problems. Every Wilson campaign against Clark backfired spectacularly. Her "I Have a Shoe Too" posts made her look desperate. Her What is delayed is not denied messaging highlighted her bitterness. Her questioning of Clark's endorsements revealed her jealousy. Wilson's attempts to create controversy only made Clark's star shine brighter while damaging her own brand reputation. Wilson's anti-Clark campaigns cost her potential partnerships and speaking opportunities, while Clark continued building her empire through positive brand associations. Wilson claimed she makes the same speaking fees as Clark, but the evidence tells a completely different story. Clark commands six-figure speaking engagements at business conferences and corporate events across the country. She appears at leadership summits where executives pay premium rates to hear her speak about overcoming challenges and building success. These aren't basketball camps or sports clinics. These are high-level business events where Clark shares the stage with Fortune 500 CEOs and industry leaders. Companies actively brag about booking Clark for their events. The Long Island Association Conference proudly promoted Clark's appearance, highlighting her as their keynote speaker for business leaders throughout New York. Corporate event planners announce Clark's participation months in advance, using her name to drive ticket sales and attendance. These organizations treat Clark like a major business figure, not just an athlete who happens to speak. Clark commands up to $100,000 per speaking appearance at corporate events. Event organizers pay these rates because Clark draws crowds and delivers content that resonates beyond sports. She talks about leadership, perseverance, and building brands in competitive markets. Her speaking topics appeal to business professionals who want to learn from her success both on and off the court. Wilson provides zero documented proof of similar corporate speaking bookings. She's never been featured as a keynote speaker at major business conferences. No companies have announced Wilson appearances at leadership summits or corporate events. Her speaking opportunities remain confined to basketball camps and WNBA-related functions where she earns significantly less than Clark's corporate rates. That's crazy because literally nobody asked, and sources close to Asia Wilson decided to answer anyway. Corporations specifically request Clark for multi-sport events and brand activations because she connects with diverse audiences. She appears at LPGA tournaments where golf fans appreciate her competitive spirit and business acumen. Youth sports camps pay premium rates for Clark because parents want their children to learn from someone who represents positive values and achievement. Business conferences book Clark because she embodies the entrepreneurial success that executives admire. Clark's crossover appeal extends far beyond traditional basketball circles. She speaks at women's leadership conferences about breaking barriers and building personal brands. Technology companies invite Clark to discuss innovation and staying ahead of competition. These diverse speaking opportunities generate substantial income streams that Wilson simply doesn't access. Wilson's brand remains trapped within traditional WNBA circles with extremely limited corporate appeal. She speaks at basketball camps and league events where fees are modest compared to corporate speaking rates. Wilson hasn't expanded into business conferences or leadership summits because companies don't see her as someone who can deliver valuable content to their professional audiences. Wilson's speaking fee claims were a pure fantasy designed to diminish Clark's obvious market advantage. She couldn't provide examples of corporate events or documented speaking fees because they don't exist. Wilson fabricated equivalence with Clark to protect her ego and maintain relevance in conversations about earning power. This pattern reveals exactly why Wilson's brand struggles while Clark's soars globally across multiple industries and audience segments. The business world has spoken with their wallets, and the verdict is devastating for Wilson. Corporate decision-makers evaluate potential brand ambassadors through multiple factors, and Wilson fails almost every test that matters to major companies. Clark attracts endorsement deals across different industries because she represents growth, positivity, and market expansion. Wilson remains stuck with her single Nike partnership because her brand carries too much risk for companies focused on broad audience appeal. Clark's positive brand associations make her incredibly valuable to corporations seeking authentic ambassadors. She represents leadership through her ability to elevate entire teams and organizations. Companies see growth potential when they partner with Clark because she expands market reach and brings new customers into their ecosystem. Her inspirational messaging resonates with diverse demographics, making her perfect for brands targeting families, young athletes, and business professionals simultaneously. Wilson's negative patterns create exactly the opposite effect for potential corporate partners. Her tendency toward controversy and public disputes makes companies nervous about long-term partnerships. Corporate marketing teams avoid athletes who generate negative headlines or create divisive conversations among consumers. Wilson's history of playing victim and creating drama represents everything that companies try to avoid when selecting brand ambassadors. Clark's global appeal transcends basketball in ways that corporate executives find incredibly valuable. She speaks at business conferences, appears at LPGA events, and connects with audiences who might never watch a WNBA game. Her crossover success proves that she can represent brands across multiple industries and customer segments. Companies pay premium rates for this kind of versatility and market reach. Wilson's brand remains narrow and divisive, limiting her appeal to traditional basketball audiences. She hasn't demonstrated ability to connect with business professionals, families, or casual sports fans who don't follow the WNBA closely. Companies need ambassadors who can grow their customer base, not athletes who only appeal to existing basketball fans. Corporate executives understand brand safety better than anyone, and Wilson represents a significant risk while Clark represents pure opportunity. Companies invest millions in brand partnerships specifically to grow their business and improve their reputation. Wilson's pattern of creating controversy and negative headlines makes her a liability for brands trying to build positive associations with their products. Clark's ability to grow entire markets sets her apart from traditional athlete endorsers. Her presence in women's basketball expanded television audiences, increased merchandise sales, and brought new sponsors into the sport. Companies recognize that Clark doesn't just represent their brand, she actively grows their business through her influence and appeal. Wilson's tendency to create division and controversy has the opposite effect on business development. Her public complaints and negative campaigns turn off potential customers and create uncomfortable associations for brands trying to maintain positive reputations. Clark's endorsement success creates a positive cycle that attracts even more brands wanting to partner with proven market movers. Her track record of growing audiences and generating positive buzz makes her increasingly valuable to companies across different industries. Wilson's pattern of jealousy and toxicity has essentially blacklisted her from major endorsement opportunities. Companies choose partners who build their brand rather than create problems, and Wilson's behavior has made that choice incredibly easy for corporate decision-makers. Wilson's tantrum about the highest-paid list perfectly captures why she'll never reach Clark's level. Her jealousy and toxic behavior have poisoned her brand while Clark builds a global empire through positivity and genuine connection with fans. Companies choose Clark because she represents growth and inspiration. They avoid Wilson because she represents division and controversy. Clark continues expanding her influence across multiple industries while Wilson remains trapped in her own negativity. The financial gap between them will only grow wider as more brands recognize the difference between an athlete who builds communities and one who tears them down.